Hello, everybody, ladies and gents. This is the episode 12 of the Blindspot Podcast. We got a great guest with us today. His name is Ayodele Mims. He goes by the name of Deli, and he is the CEO of Mims Seed Company. Okay. And before we jump into the interview, just a little update from Definitive Safety Group. We recently were awarded another contract with the Department of Fish and Wildlife here in California. And we also just finished up our exam food manager certification in the city of Antioch. So if anybody wants to come get certified or reach out for any courses, let us know. We are at your disposal. But I don't want to have everybody wait too long. Okay. So without further ado, I want to invite our next guest, episode 12's next guest, Ayodele Mims of Mims Seed Company. How you
Hello,
doing?
hello. Good evening. I'm doing well, sir. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. Appreciate you coming on, man. Appreciate you. We had to make things connect, but I appreciate you for jumping on here.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the invite. I love what you're doing on your end.
All right.
Special stuff.
Hey, appreciate it, brother. But just to jump right into it, could you just tell us, a little bit about yourself and your innovation, your educational platform, Mims Seed Company, and what just inspired you to start it?
Okay, so I was raised by a teacher. My mom taught at the same high school that I graduated from in Brooklyn, New York, Boys and Girls High School. Uh, my mom, my father, they were both artists. They met at Pratt University in Brooklyn in the 70s. So I've always been exposed to educational matter and deep thinking, artistic thought, but I just never really put in the work. I didn't practice hard enough to see the fruits of actually drawing on pen and paper, but I just always felt like I thought differently than others. So during the pandemic, while teaching classes through a computer for the very first time, I just figured that what is it that all of my students, or not all of them, what is it that differentiates the students that make it from the students that don't? Thinking about all of the kids I grew up with in Brooklyn, New York, thinking about all my friends, my fraternity brothers, the people that I met in Grambling, Louisiana at a HBCU, the people who I met at Oregon State University, just trying to find a common bond and a connecting thread. What determines success? What are the elements or the components of success? And why do some students have the resilience to push through while other students who may be just as smart or smarter, uh, in my estimation, what makes them try harder or what makes someone else try less? And so I started doing a bunch of research. I started immersing myself in citations and articles and neuroscience until I acquired different skill sets than I was coming into the pandemic with. The pandemic was a watershed moment in my life because my first child was born, my only child. My son was born 2 months before the pandemic even started. So my world changed completely, and I started thinking, what is a legacy I can leave for this young man, that's better than a diary, better than photos? Like, how could I clone my brain and put it on wax to where he knows exactly what his dad would have wanted him to know if and when I checked out from this earth. And I came up with the instructional the instructional framework of Seed Company, which started as single sessions on Zoom, with parents who wanted me to interact with their kids. So it was like tutoring, but on steroids, super steroids. And it was a personalized education model to where the student would let me know what they were deficient in, and I would craft a layout for them to teach them their subjects due to their interests instead
Yeah.
of cramming in information that they're not interested in. It's not meaningful to them. They don't see
Mm.
the practical applications of it.
Yeah. Now let's rewind for a second. You said students, you mentioned students. Where do you you're a teacher. Where do you currently teach at now?
So I've been with Oakland Unified School District for over 10 years. I was
Okay.
the athletic director at Oakland Military Institute for 6 years. So during the pandemic, at this point, I was at Oakland Military Institute, and I'm
Oakland military. And
yes,
with your background in education, entrepreneurship,
mhm.
um, how do you believe your perspective and experiences have kind of helped shape, your platform? How has it helped shape Mims Seed Company?
I believe MC Company stands out because of the versatility of the individuals that I've encountered. I've been around people from all walks of life. Um, Try to have the common touch and always stay humble. You can learn from anybody, treat everybody with respect. So, as a teacher, I'm seeing the things that students are struggling with, the things that they don't value as important. Like, for instance, I had 17-year-old students who did not know what continent they lived on. And we're talking about smart kids. And I'm like, well, how could that slip through the cracks? And then over years and years in education, you just start seeing that there's a lot of gaps in the learning that students missed, which makes them, they call it a grade level behind or 2 grade levels behind. So there's a prerequisite amount of information that you should have before you go to, let's say, English 2. That means you should have mastered all the components in English 1. So to put a student in English 2 before they've mastered the components of English 1, you're asking them to either catch up double time, increase their skills, increase their capacity and their resilience to learn without the building blocks that should have already been there. So a hack that I found to get around that is to actually make all learning relevant to what that specific student is interested in,
I
and to
hate to
make it in
I hate to
getting.
cut you off, man. I hate to cut you off right here. But is that a California thing? Because I noticed they'll put, we had an experience with that. They'll put the student in the second class
Mhm.
before they even finish the part one. Is that just like a state thing or something? I just had to touch on that because that hit
Yeah.
home a little bit.
There's a lot that goes in with that. It's a loaded, complex subject because you have some parents who are
Mm,
all for holding their kids accountable. And
mm.
then you have parents who don't really want to hold their kid accountable because of the social stigmas behind getting left back.
Oh,
You
I
know,
see.
back in our day when we was coming up, we knew students who got left back,
Yeah.
and some of them were able to climb out of that hole, and some of them allowed it to become a crutch and or an
Mm,
excuse for why they didn't do this or why they didn't do that, and it just was attached with a lot of shame,
mm,
not really anything positive.
yeah.
So rather than getting left back, you have all types of legal matters such as No Child Left Behind. You had an
Mm,
Obama initiative. It's loaded because
yeah.
if a student, all right. So first off, there's a framework that teachers judge how well a student is learning by. It's called Bloom's taxonomy. For anybody who's interested in going
Mm,
in further depth, I do that with MemSeed, or you can look it up for yourself um, until you can see what I have for you. But
mm,
Bloom's taxonomy just pretty much Think about the shape of a pyramid, and it breaks down the bottom level of learning being remembering. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can remember something, that's just the first stage of learning. But you cannot learn nothing you can't remember. So
Mm-hmm.
a baby doesn't speak any intelligible words, but it can remember where its mother's chest is.
Mm-hmm.
It knows that's where the food is. So it
Mm-hmm.
starts learning through association.
Got it.
So it remembers, but it does not go to the next level of learning, which is understanding. Okay, it does not understand inherently why it's drinking milk. It just know it makes it feel better, and so it does it. It doesn't even know it's called milk. Doesn't even know it's called a breast. It doesn't know it's called breastfeeding. Doesn't understand all that, but it remembers where to go for the good feeling. So if a teacher is testing your child, or you, if it's adult learning, and you can't remember what they just went over, nor can you understand it, then the hopes for learning have gone by the wayside. So what Mims Seed Company does is it helps bridge that gap, makes it much quicker because I already start with things that you understand and remember.
Yeah. So, to kind of backtrack, you had mentioned COVID. That kind of rolls into our next question.
Yes, sir.
The pandemic was, of course, something I don't think we all weren't prepared for.
No.
How do you think the pandemic had an impact on the educational landscape? And you know, what do you think Mims Seed Company, your platform, has done or can do to help the kids that may have felt that impact or may have been impacted by COVID-19 educational.
Yes, sir. It was unprecedented times for everybody. Nobody alive had ever lived through anything like that. Not counting the Great Depression and things of that nature, world wars notwithstanding. But the COVID um, situation, the crisis, if it caused the entirety of society in the modern world to go to a model where talking to someone through the computer, which we're actually doing right now as well, became the norm. It was not necessarily the norm. You probably knew it was something that could be done, but it was not the preferred means of communication. So since it became a preferred means of communication, because it was traceless, there's no touching, you don't have to breathe on people. You had people who were doing interviews with COVID, and you knew you couldn't get sick. It just felt like foolproof. But the negative of that is a lot of our kids lost a year and a half of quality learning. I tried to empathize with them, put myself in their shoes, and I tried to think when I was in high school, would I actually be logging in to my computer for classes on a day to day? Did I have that type of discipline? Did I have that type of motivation? If I knew, or if I felt like the world was either ending or life was changing, would I have done that? I don't know. It's hard to go off of what ifs, but I do know for a fact that it negatively impacted the majority of students that I know, that I interacted with in California. They were not logging in. They were
Yeah.
getting behind. Uh, you had students who refused to turn their cameras on for a role. Some teachers
Hmm.
were extremely hard sticklers, where if you don't have your camera on, you're absent no
Yeah.
matter what.
Yeah.
But not taking into account some students' home life might not be the best. You have
Might
some,
not. Yeah.
yeah, you have some kids whose background might be ashamed, embarrassed to show what their
Hmm.
home looks like. So I tried to be very empathetic with that. I didn't have that type of decree for my students that they had to have their cameras on. As
Yeah.
long as they were participating in the chat, answering questions, I could do what's known as a formative assessment,
Hmm.
where I ask you to rate something along a spectrum from 1 to 5. How well do you understand it? This, that, and the
Hmm.
other. And I can get a good idea where you're at.
No,
Plus, I don't have to ask you a question in front of the class and embarrass you. I can
yeah,
just write something in the chat directly to you, and
yeah.
everybody's hearing the message, but only you're seeing the writing. That's something that's never really existed.
Hmm.
In
Now a lot of the kids though, they kind of lack those foundational skills or those skills. Um, how do you think, yourself being an educator in MMC company can help those kids acquire those foundational skills that that they may not use online, or that they may have to use interacting in a classroom setting in front of their peers or something like that. Those foundational skill sets that we learn just interacting with each other outside of school.
right. So with there's good and bad with everything. So what technology positively has done is it's made people who were aware of life before the technology, it's given us access to more power than we ever thought imaginable. But for students who were not born before certain technologies, they've had it their whole lives. They take it for granted. I know kids in high school who do not know their parents' number by heart. If they was to lose their cell phone, they could not call their parent. That's that's crazy. Don't know how to sign their name. They have to put their initials as their signature. That's crazy to me. But life changes. They can type. They could probably out type me on the speed. So it's more effective time wise, but they've skipped over a lot of steps in the foundation. So a lot of the kids of nowadays are socially awkward due to social media, primarily. The pandemic, secondarily, was a big influence on that negative aspect of social interaction. But not even knowing how to really talk to people in real life, like how to send a DM, how to make a comment under a photo, but actually carrying on a conversation right there in front of someone is called spontaneous communication. A lot of them
Mhm.
don't want any of that.
Yeah,
They
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 don't
don't
they
want to
don't want
get told.
that face to face, and they get kind of stuck.
Yeah,
But
it's a lot of things with that. It's lack of vocabulary, it's lack
hmm
of self confidence. It's
yeah,
some people just don't feel like they're witty enough to go back and forth off
yeah.
the
But
cuff.
you can't respond in real life with an emoji. You got to
Right,
be able to carry a conversation.
right.
And then moving on though, moving forward, um, you know, your resume speaks for itself. You've been impressive in Oakland, and just let us know. You've been recognized by the Oakland Police and the OK program as an elite facilitator.
Yes, sir.
Um, can you share some specific ways in which your programs have positively influenced, young participants in Oakland?
Yes, sir. For the past 3 years, I've been a facilitator on record for the OK program, which stands for Oakland Kids, Our Kids program. And with that, with Oakland Kids program, the
Yeah.
goal is
Oakland Kids, you got the Oakland Kids in there. You
Oakland
can't
Kids.
have the
Yes,
Oakland
sir.
Kids program without the kids, man.
That's a fact. So the founder of OK program, Deputy Donald Norcroft, is from Arkansas, and he's a older black man who moved out to California in the early '90s, and he was already an officer in Arkansas. He's from a real country, rural town. His dad worked with his hands, a bricklayer, and he's just a real humble dude. Anybody who's ever met Depp loves him to death. And he didn't like the interaction between black men and officers. So he felt that the best way that he could change that interaction was to start with black boys. And he made a strategic decision not to make it open for black girls, because he felt like if he changed the black boys mindset and he uplifted and empowered the black boys, that they would become leaders in their households and in their community, rather than changing the black girls, but leaving the black boys behind and becoming a hindrance that way. So, OK Program has what's known as Kick It sessions every Saturday at multiple locations. You have Elmhurst in Oakland, and you have West Oakland Middle School in West Oakland. So, one in East Oakland, one in West Oakland. And it's Black Officers Association approved. They just pretty much they pour so much into the kids. They tell them how to interact with the police. Um, they become mentors from the kids. Just try to get them not to be intimidated by seeing a badge, and not looking at officers automatically like they're enemies, reminding them that there are some black men who love you who are cops. So that's a beautiful thing. My first interaction with OK Program when I worked at Frick Middle School as a PE teacher about a decade ago, and I started chaperoning trips to Disneyland in Anaheim, and other different areas where we took the boys and making speeches and doing galas with the OK Program. I've always loved what they do. It's positive. So when I started my company, they were some of my biggest endorsers. And every Saturday, I take 40 young black men through a series of experiential learning workshops where I'm not just talking at them, they're not just reading something in a book. I'm actually putting them into a simulated scenario that they would be interested in, that's relevant to their lives, whether it be sexual situations, whether it be violence, whether it be vaping. There's plenty of different situations that I put them through.
And then just touching on that too, some of the things now in education, you got technology, everything's kind of pushing for, you got AI, where do you see, in the future, how education is going to be carried over, to our demographic, to the Black demographic? And then, how can, Mims Seed Company counter that or facilitate that technology arising,
The way the technology is moving right now at light speed, it's really taken away a lot of the excuses that a lot of people in our era had for why they did not succeed, because it's allowing you to work at your own pace, learn at your own pace, and learn in different ways. But the catch 22 is, or the paradox is, if you don't know what you don't know, you still at a disadvantage. All right. So 20 years ago, coming into college, I did not know that the computer boom was about to change the world. I used to get the America Online floppy disks in the mail, and we had a computer, and we thought it was cool, it was neat, but we didn't see the iPad coming. We didn't see the iPod coming. We didn't see an iPhone coming. So had I known how the world was going to progress, I would have been a computer science dude. But especially with my gaming background, I grew up playing video games and breaking down graphics and this, that, and the other, had all the systems, but I just didn't think that that was my lane.
Yeah, lane. Yeah.
Yeah. So I ended up getting my master's in kinesiology, sport administration. That was more so my lane.
Yeah.
But I became more narrow focused instead of opening it up. I've always been curious, though. I've always been willing to learn, but because I did not have the foundations of how computer science operated, or I didn't assume that I had the foundations, I just let it be.
There you go.
But that's what they do. That's not my lane.
Yeah, yeah.
I had to come up with that approach.
So for Mims, though, moving forward on Mims Seed Company, what partnerships, collaborations? We know you're with the OK program. Any scholarships that you may have lined up moving forward from MC Company?
Well, I'm doing. I have an opportunity on the board with Monroe School District. Trying to get MIMSeed out there and pilot programs out there with the young people at their high school system. And Louisiana is near and dear to me because that's where I completed my bachelor's and master's degrees. I pledged my fraternity out there. I feel like that was a large part of my upbringing. Changed me from a boy to a man down there. So yeah, Louisiana, the South. I want to bring MIMSeed from shore to shore. I'm trying to get it into, excuse me, foster care facilities. I want my instructional design framework to be brought to students or young brothers and sisters who are about to be in the juvenile system. Um, Give them different ways to access information and not the traditional way that seems to be played out. We're moving away from the traditional model. And that's what the pandemic really showed, that, oh, if we can do class without being in person, then why ever go to class? I know people who are still working from home. I didn't really know people who work from home like that before the pandemic, but that's scalable. So
Yeah.
as far as AI, I definitely use AI a lot.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but if someone never was proficient without the AI,
Mm,
to become proficient with AI only without knowledge of the foundational skills analog, you're still going to be at a disadvantage because you're
yeah.
not going to be as versatile.
So, how can educators, parents, and other individuals, new learners, get access to MIMC Company? How can they connect with you to get the resources that you may offer?
hmm Well, we have a website redesign. So, for anybody interested, on November 11th, our new website, mimseedcompany.com, will be back up and running. We did a full web design redesign. So, November 11th, the website is back up. Until then, we have Mims at Mimseed Company on Instagram. You're welcome to DM for um, the different programs that we provide, the Bloom's taxonomy frameworks, indoor workshops. Um, I'm willing to travel to your school if you're in the Bay Area of California. If you're outside of California, I'm willing to travel as well. So it's on a case by case basis. But we have Facebook at Memseed, we have Instagram at Memseed, and we have the new redesign on the website coming. We're going to start cranking back up our YouTube channel as well.
Okay, great, great. Um, what message or advice, would you leave the people with today? And they appreciate you coming on, but what would you like to share with our audience? What kind of advice would you leave with them?
If I had to share some advice, I would say that every young person in America needs to understand emotional intelligence and they need to understand critical thinking.
Mm,
If you understand emotional intelligence and critical thinking, you'll have a leg up on your competition the rest of your life.
for sure, for sure.
So, elements of critical thinking would be things like interpretation. How do you interpret certain things? If a woman is standing by a door and you're going on a date with her and she doesn't walk through the door, and then you come as a man and you open the door and close it, you didn't even interpret that she was waiting for you to open the door for her.
Hmm.
So that just totally missed you. Either it was never explained to you, it was never emphasized to you how to be a gentleman, but
Hmm.
you couldn't even think critically there because you that just went right over your head. That's what it's
Yeah,
saying, because it went over your head.
yeah,
analysis, being able to compare two different things to one
Mm-hmm.
another, evaluate them. Your friends trying to get you to go smoke weed, or you could go home and do your schoolwork. You
Yeah.
know, you 15, so your brain not even fully developed. But
Yeah.
the earlier you start working on these skills, the better, because
Exactly.
we've all made poor
Made
mistakes.
those types of mistakes,
Yeah.
man.
Hmm.
Hey, I appreciate you, bro, coming on,
For
chopping
sure.
it up with us on the blind spot. I thank you, man. Your interview is gonna be watched and it's much needed in our community. I'm gonna say that. I appreciate it, brother. And appreciate you coming on. Any last words, anything you want to say, or that's it?
Last words are stay curious.
Stay
Stay curious,
curious.
people. The things you don't know are easier for you to grasp than they've ever been. But you got to stay curious. If you don't care, then that's not an excuse for not knowing.
Yeah. There you go, man. Hey, we appreciate you, Ayodele, and thank you, man. That's Graham fam right there,
Yes,
y'all.
sir. Yes,
A
sir.
lot of people
Right.
don't know about that Graham. All right, man.
I,
Have a good one. Hey, thank you guys for tuning in to the Blind Spot podcast. That's episode 12. If you guys want to be a part of the Blind Spot, go to our website. Is www.definitivesafetygroup.com. Just click on the insights and sign up for the Blind Spot podcast. All right. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Thank you.